First contact. Supreme Commander Thrax stood on the command deck of the inevitable Victory, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display with satisfaction. The blue-green world rotating slowly on the main view screen would soon be another conquest for the Zarkonian Empire, another primitive species to subjugate, another resource-rich planet to exploit. Status report, he commanded, his voice resonating through the bridge. All ships in formation, Commander, replied his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vex. 3,000 warships deployed as ordered. Preliminary scans indicate the inhabitants possess rudimentary space technology and nuclear weaponry, but nothing that poses a threat to our fleet. Thrax's mouth ridges curved into what his species considered a smile. Excellent. Commence the standard first contact protocol. Let's see how quickly they surrender. The communications officer, a slender Zarkonian with specialized vocal organs, transmitted the Empire's standard ultimatum to every broadcast frequency on the planet below. Surrender immediately or face annihilation. They're responding, Commander, the officer announced moments later, surprise evident in his tone. On screen, Thrax ordered. The view screen shifted to show a human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair, dressed in a formal blue uniform adorned with insignia. Her expression remained calm and composed despite the gravity of the situation. This is Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your transmission and request clarification. Our species has no quarrel with yours. We propose immediate diplomatic discussions to avoid any misunderstanding. Thrax chittered with amusement. Typical primitive response. They always believe they can negotiate their way out of inevitability. He turned to Vex. Send our standard clarification. Complete surrender or complete destruction. They have one planetary rotation to decide. Commander, interrupted the science officer, preliminary analysis of their communications networks indicates they are still fragmented into nation-states, though they maintain some form of global governance. Their military capabilities are uncoordinated and technologically inferior to ours by approximately 3 centuries. As expected, Thrax responded. A species that cannot even unify its own world poses no challenge to the Empire. Deploy reconnaissance drones to identify key military installations and government centers. I want targeting solutions prepared for all major population centers. As the crew moved to execute his orders, Thrax settled into his command chair. After conquering 17 worlds, the procedure had become routine. First contact, ultimatum, token resistance, then submission. The Zarkonian playbook rarely needed adjustment. In the underground command center beneath Geneva, Admiral Chen terminated the communication with the alien commander and turned to face the assembled world leaders and military commanders on the massive screens surrounding her. They're not here to talk, she stated flatly. Assessment. General Ibrahim Khalid of the Pan-African Coalition leaned forward. Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered, Admiral. Preliminary analysis of their ships suggests weapon systems that could reduce our cities to ash within hours. Conventional military response would be suicide. Added General Lai from the Asian Alliance, her expression grim. We'd lose millions in the first wave alone. President Alvarez of the Americas Union rubbed his temples. Can we negotiate? Perhaps offer limited resources, establish trade. With respect, Mr. President, interrupted Director Yumiko Tanaka of Global Intelligence. Their communication patterns indicate a hierarchical conquest culture. They've done this before, many times. They're not interested in cooperation. A heavy silence descended over the command center. Then, a voice spoke from a screen showing only a silhouette. The mysterious figure known only as Prometheus, head of the world's most advanced technology consortium. We've been preparing for this possibility since the Titan anomaly 20 years ago, Prometheus said, voice digitally altered. Operation Phoenix is ready. We just need time. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. How much time? 7 days, minimum. 10 would be better. Chen turned to the assembled leaders. Then we give them what they don't expect. Not surrender, not conventional resistance. We give them confusion. Confusion won't stop their ships, General Khalid objected. No, Chen agreed, but it might just buy us the time we need. She tapped her tablet, bringing up a detailed strategic plan that had been developing in secret for over a decade. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose we implement the Hydra Protocol immediately. The world leaders exchanged glances, some doubtful, others resolute. Finally, President Alvarez spoke for them all. Unanimous consent. God help us all. The Zarkonian fleet moved into position as Earth's deadline for surrender approached. Thrax was mildly surprised when no formal response came through official channels. Instead, Earth's various communication networks erupted with contradictory messages, some calling for peace, others for resistance, many spreading wildly different claims about the aliens' intentions. Curious, noted Vex. Their response appears completely uncoordinated. Fear breeds chaos in primitive species, Thrax replied dismissively. They've obviously failed to reach consensus. Commence the first wave of attacks. Target their military installations as identified by our drones. The inevitable victory shuddered slightly as its main weapons powered up. Throughout the fleet, thousands of targeting systems locked onto Earth's defenses. Thrax expected the humans' primitive satellites and orbital platforms to be eliminated within minutes, their ground-based military installations within hours. The first salvos fired, streams of energy lancing toward Earth. But something unexpected happened. Several beams were deflected by invisible shields that hadn't appeared on any scans. Others struck their targets but caused significantly less damage than projected. What's happening? Thrax demanded, rising from his chair. Unknown, Commander, the tactical officer replied, clearly confused. Some form of defensive technology our scans didn't detect. And, sir, we're receiving scattered counterattacks. Counterattacks? From what? They have nothing that can reach us. As if in answer, dozens of small, fast-moving objects appeared on the tactical display, rising from Earth's surface at incredible speeds. Most were easily intercepted by the fleet's automated defenses, but several got through, attaching themselves to the hulls of 6 Zarkonian destroyers. Moments later, all 6 ships went dark, their systems completely offline. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, the science officer reported, examining the data. Crude but effective against our standard shielding. Thrax's tendrils twitched with irritation. Adjust shields accordingly. Continue the attack as planned. But as the first day of the invasion progressed, more anomalies appeared. Human resistance proved not only more technologically capable than expected but bizarrely unpredictable. Their tactics followed no recognizable military doctrine, with some areas mounting sophisticated defenses while others appeared completely unprotected. By the planetary rotation's end, the Zarkonian fleet had secured orbits and destroyed approximately 30% of Earth's identified military capabilities, but at the cost of 23 ships and with troubling gaps in their intelligence about what the humans were actually doing. As Thrax retired to his quarters to reassess the situation, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The humans were clearly outmatched, yet they showed neither the panic of a doomed species nor the coordination of one executing a coherent defense. It was almost as if they were deliberately creating patterns of chaos. But to what end, he couldn't fathom. The unconventional response. The second day of the invasion brought more puzzles for Supreme Commander Thrax. The Zarkonian ground forces had established beachheads on every continent, expecting to encounter organized military resistance. Instead, they found abandoned positions, sporadic guerrilla attacks, and baffling technological countermeasures that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Report, Thrax demanded, his patience wearing thin. Sub-Commander Vex gestured to the holographic display showing global deployment. Our forces have secured these regions. He indicated highlighted areas covering approximately 40% of Earth's landmass. Resistance has been inconsistent. Some human military units fight to the death. Others abandon their posts before we arrive. Civilian behavior is equally confounding. Many population centers are completely evacuated, while in others, inhabitants continue their daily routines despite our presence. Their communications, Thrax inquired. Still chaotic, sir. Their global network, what they call the Internet, remains operational despite our efforts to disable it. They appear to be using it to coordinate, but in ways our algorithms cannot predict or track. The encryption methods shift constantly. Thrax paced the command deck, his agitation visible to all. This wasn't how conquests were supposed to proceed. By now, the humans should have either mounted a cohesive but futile defense or begun surrender negotiations. Instead, they seemed to be fighting a war unlike any the Zarkonians had encountered before. Science officer, analysis of their technological capabilities. The science officer, a highly augmented Zarkonian named Mentor, stepped forward. Inconsistent with their development level, Commander. Some of their countermeasures employ principles we've only mastered within the last century, yet their space technology remains primitive. It's as if they've been selectively advancing technologies useful for defense while deliberately maintaining the appearance of overall technological backwardness. Impossible. Thrax dismissed. No species develops that way naturally. Unless, Vex suggested hesitantly, they've been preparing for invasion. Specifically, the implication hung in the air. Had the humans somehow known the Zarkonians were coming? Or were they simply paranoid enough to have been preparing for some cosmic threat? Increase the pressure, Thrax finally ordered. Deploy the second wave to all major cities not yet under our control. I want the human leadership found and captured. Someone must be coordinating this resistance, however disjointed it appears. In a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Chen studied the holographic display showing the Zarkonian deployment patterns with grim satisfaction. They're following the predicted response curves, noted General Khalid, who had joined her at the secondary command center. Escalating force, widening their deployment to compensate for our scattered resistance. And thinning their lines exactly as we hoped, Chen added. Prometheus, status update. The shadowy figure appeared on a secure screen. 87% complete. The network is holding despite their attempts to breach our quantum encryption. Phase 3 can begin. Chen turned to the assembled officers. You've all seen the cost reports. We've lost over 2 million military personnel and civilians already. What we do next will determine whether those losses were in vain. A young officer raised her hand. Ma'am, the civilians in New Delhi. They're asking when evacuation orders will come. Chen's expression hardened. There will be no evacuation orders for New Delhi, Beijing, or Mexico City. Those populations are our Phase 3 shield. They know their role. Uncomfortable glances passed between several officers, but none voiced objection. The Hydra Protocol had been unanimously approved, and everyone in the room understood the mathematics of species survival. Transmit the Phase 3 activation codes, Chen ordered, and may our descendants forgive what we've done. On the third day, Thrax watched in growing frustration as human resistance suddenly intensified around 3 major cities, New Delhi, Beijing, and Mexico City. After offering minimal opposition previously, these regions erupted with sophisticated defensive systems that inflicted serious casualties on Zarkonian forces. They're protecting these population centers, Vex observed. Finally, a predictable response. Too predictable. Thrax muttered. Something felt wrong. Full orbital bombardment of all 3 cities bypassed their ground defenses entirely. The tactical officer hesitated. Sir, our preliminary estimates suggest civilian casualties would exceed 1 billion. Execute the order. Thrax snapped. This ends today. The fleet repositioned, bringing their most powerful weapons to bear on the 3 cities. Energy beams lanced downward, powerful enough to reduce urban centers to molten glass. But as they struck, something unprecedented happened. The beams didn't reach their targets. Instead, they seemed to vanish into invisible barriers kilometers above the cities. Impossible. Mentor exclaimed, checking his instruments. They've deployed some kind of energy absorption technology across entire metropolitan areas. Our weapons are feeding it. Feeding what? Thrax demanded. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared across the command deck. Hundreds of new signatures appeared on the tactical display, rising from oceans, deserts, and seemingly empty terrain all over the planet. Launch detected, the tactical officer shouted. Multiple launches from everywhere. Thrax watched in disbelief as thousands of missiles ascended toward his fleet. Not the primitive nuclear weapons they'd expected, but something else entirely, sleek, fast, and emitting energy signatures unlike anything in the Zarkonian database. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. All ships, defensive protocols. But it was too late for many. The missiles didn't detonate in conventional explosions. Instead, each released a cloud of microscopic drones that swarmed over Zarkonian vessels, bypassing shields designed to repel energy and kinetic weapons. Within minutes, ship after ship reported critical systems failures as the microdrones infiltrated their technology. They've been planning this, Vex realized aloud, horror in his voice. Everything until now. The chaotic resistance, the seemingly uncoordinated defense. It was all to mask their true preparations and draw us into position. Thrax stood rigid as reports of disabled ships flooded in. Nearly a third of his fleet had been neutralized without destruction, their crews trapped inside powerless vessels. Another third had sustained significant damage from conventional attacks that suddenly seemed far more coordinated than before. His communication officer interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. From Earth. They're broadcasting on our own command frequency." "How is that possible?" Thrax demanded, but gestured for the officer to put it through. The view screen activated to show Admiral Chen, seated calmly at what appeared to be a command center. "Supreme Commander Thrax," she began, without waiting for acknowledgement. "You're probably wondering how we knew your name, your command protocols, and the vulnerabilities in your fleet's design." Thrax could only stare in stunned silence. "The answer is simple," Chen continued. "We've been watching you for decades. Your empire's expansion wasn't as subtle as you thought. Every world you conquered sent signals into space, dying civilizations warning others of your approach. Impossible, Thrax finally managed. None of them had technology capable of. Not individually, Chen agreed. But we'd had relay stations beyond our solar system for generations. Small, undetectable, listening, learning, preparing. Vex moved closer to Thrax, lowering his voice. "Sir, this could be a bluff. They can't possibly have. Your security code is Nexus 9 Gamma Epsilon Prime." Chen interrupted, causing Vex to freeze. "The override command for your flagship's propulsion system is Eternal Empire Ascendant, followed by your genetic identifier sequence, which begins with marker ZK-117. Thrax felt a cold dread settling in his core. These were among the most closely guarded secrets in the fleet. "What do you want?" he finally asked, all pretense of superiority gone. Chen's expression remained impassive. "I'm not calling to negotiate, Commander. I'm calling to explain what happens next. The hidden strategy." Admiral Chen's face filled the view screen on the Zarkonian command deck, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding throughout the fleet. Behind her, screens displayed real-time data on the alien armada, far too accurate and detailed to be gathered by primitive human technology. "For centuries," Chen continued, "humanity has debated whether we were alone in the universe. When we finally detected signals confirming intelligent life existed beyond our solar system, we celebrated until we decoded enough to understand what those signals meant." The view screen split to show footage that made Thrax's blood run cold, recordings of Zarkonian conquest operations on other worlds, including his own triumphant speeches to subjugated populations. 17 worlds before ours, Chen stated, each with their own cultures, their own dreams, their own right to exist. all reduced to resource extraction colonies under your empire's boot. How did you get these recordings? Thrax demanded, his composure cracking. The dying have little left but their stories, Chen replied cryptically. We listened when no one else would. And we planned. One of Thrax's junior officers interrupted, his voice tight with panic. Commander, we've lost contact with all ground forces in these sectors. A holographic map highlighted vast regions across Earth's surface where Zarkonian troops had been deployed. And our scanners can't penetrate whatever energy fields they've erected over their major cities. Thrax turned back to the view screen. What have you done with my soldiers? The same thing you plan to do with our civilians, Chen answered, her voice hardening slightly. The question you should be asking, Commander, is what we've been doing beneath those energy shields, and why we needed your fleet exactly where it is now. 24 hours earlier, beneath the shield covering what had once been Mexico City, Prometheus stood before the massive quantum computer complex that represented humanity's greatest technological achievement. No longer hiding behind digital anonymity, Dr. Eliza Wright, the most brilliant physicist of her generation, supervised final adjustments to the system that had required the combined intellectual resources of every scientific mind on Earth to create. The entanglement network is stable, reported her chief engineer. All 7 subterranean nodes are synchronized and ready to receive power. Eliza nodded, allowing herself a moment to contemplate what they were about to attempt. The theories had been sound, the simulations promising, but nothing on this scale had ever been tested. It couldn't have been, not without the enormous energy input they were about to receive. Begin the absorption sequence, she ordered. Route all incoming bombardment energy through the conversion arrays. Around the world, in similarly shielded facilities beneath New Delhi, Beijing, and 4 other population centers, identical commands were being given. The plan had always depended on the Zarkonians following their established conquest protocols that invariably included orbital bombardment of resistant population centers. What the aliens couldn't know was that their energy weapons were firing directly into the most sophisticated power collection system ever devised, feeding the very weapon intended to defeat them. Back on the command deck of the inevitable Victory, Thrax struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what was unfolding. Our intelligence indicated your species was fractured, disorganized, he said. You still fight wars among yourselves. How could you possibly coordinate a response like this? Admiral Chen actually smiled. A small, sad expression. We've had our differences, Commander. Our conflicts, our ideological divides. But 20 years ago, when we first intercepted those distress signals, something changed. Humans have always been at our best when facing existential threats. The unification protocol, came a voice from behind Thrax. It was Mentor, the science officer, who had been analyzing the data streaming in from their few remaining functional sensors. Commander, I believe they've achieved something our theorists deemed impossible. They've created a planet-wide quantum entanglement network. Meaning what exactly? Thrax demanded. Meaning, Chen answered for him, that we no longer need physical infrastructure to coordinate our resistance. Our communications, our defense systems, our counterattacks, all linked instantaneously across quantum dimensions your science has barely begun to explore. Sub-Commander Vex, who had been coordinating with the remaining fleet, approached Thrax with undisguised alarm. Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups at multiple points around their planet, whatever they've been constructing under those shields. It's powering up, using our own weapons' energy against us. Thrax turned back to Chen, rage and disbelief battling for dominance. What do you hope to achieve? Even crippled, our fleet still possesses enough firepower to reduce your world to ash. You still don't understand, Chen replied, almost gently. We're not trying to defeat your fleet, Commander. We're trying to save your species from itself. Before Thrax could respond, Mentor gasped audibly. Commander, the energy readings, they're not building weapons. They're creating some kind of dimensional gateway. On the view screen, Admiral Chen nodded. Precisely. For too long, species like yours have operated on the principle that might makes right. That technological superiority grants the privilege to dominate. We decided to show you an alternative path. The tactical display suddenly lit up as 7 massive energy signatures emerged from Earth's surface, converging in the space between the planet and the Zarkonian fleet. Where they met, space itself seemed to distort, twisting into patterns that defied conventional physics. "What is this?" Thrax whispered, all pretense of command authority forgotten in the face of the incomprehensible. "We call it the bridge," Chen explained. "A doorway to a dimension where consciousness can exist without the need for conquest or competition for resources, a place your victims have been trying to reach for millennia." The distortion grew, expanding into what appeared to be a massive portal of swirling energy. And from within that portal, impossibly, came voices. Thousands upon thousands of voices speaking in languages from across the galaxy, including the ancient dialects of Zarkonia itself. "They're still there," Chen said, her voice filled with genuine wonder despite the circumstances. "Every species, every mind your empire thought it had extinguished. Consciousness doesn't end when bodies die, Commander. It transforms." Mentor approached the view screen, his scientific curiosity overcoming even his loyalty to the Empire. "You've discovered the theoretical consciousness substrate," he breathed. "The quantum realm where information patterns persist after biological termination." "With help," Chen acknowledged, "from those you thought you had conquered." The final message. The portal hovering between Earth and the Zarkonian fleet pulsed with energy, casting ethereal light across the command deck of the inevitable victory. Supreme Commander Thrax stood transfixed, along with his entire crew, as the impossible gateway stabilized. Within its swirling depths, patterns formed and dissolved, patterns that somehow conveyed meaning directly to the mind, rather than through visual interpretation. Every Zarkonian who gazed upon it experienced a profound sense of recognition, as if ancestral memories were suddenly awakened. "Our scientists theorized its existence centuries ago," whispered Mentor, the science officer. "The dimension where information exists as pure pattern, unconstrained by physical limitations. We abandoned the research as impractical, while we embraced it," Admiral Chen replied from the viewscreen. "Not just as theoretical physics, but as the next evolutionary step for consciousness itself." Thrax finally tore his gaze from the portal, his 4 eyes narrowing at Chen. "Why show us this? What possible advantage does revealing such technology give you in our conflict?" Chen's expression softened, showing what might have been genuine compassion. "This isn't about advantage, Commander. It's about truth. The beings whose worlds you conquered, they're not gone. Their consciousness persisted, fled to this dimension, and eventually found ways to communicate with civilizations still in physical form, including ours." "Impossible," Thrax insisted, though with diminishing conviction. "The distress signals we received," Chen continued, "weren't just warnings about your empire. They contained fragments of consciousness, quantum echoes of the victims of your conquests. They taught us, guided us toward technologies your empire had deliberately suppressed because they threatened your philosophical foundations." The portal's glow intensified, and within it, shapes began to coalesce, translucent, ethereal forms that somehow managed to convey the essence of the species the Zarkonians had subjugated. "They're here," Chen said simply. "All of them. And they have a message for you." A chorus of voices emanated from the portal, speaking in perfect Zarkonian. "There is another way." Thrax stepped back involuntarily. The voices were impossibly unified yet distinctly individual, billions of consciousness patterns speaking as one while retaining their separate identities. "What trickery is this?" he demanded, though his voice had lost its commanding edge. "No trick," Chen assured him. "Just the culmination of what these beings have been working toward since your empire began its expansion. A chance to show that existence doesn't need to be a zero-sum game of conquest and subjugation." From the portal, the consciousness of a being whose species had been the first conquest of the Zarkonian Empire separated from the chorus. Its form shifted into a semblance of what it had once been physically. A tall, graceful entity with features that stirred ancient racial memories in every Zarkonian present. "We were your first victims," it said, its voice resonating not through air but directly in their minds. "You believed you had extinguished us, but you merely freed us from physical constraints. We have watched your empire grow through violence, repeating the same pattern with each new world. We grieve not just for ourselves, but for you, for what you could have become." Sub-Commander Vex moved to Thrax's side. "Commander, this must be some form of psychological warfare. They cannot possibly. They know the Song of Ascension." Thrax interrupted, his voice barely audible. "The sacred melodies lost when the first temple fell 5,000 years ago." Indeed, underlying the entity's speech was a harmonious pattern that every Zarkonian recognized at some primal level, cultural memory encoded in their very genetic structure, music that had not been heard in physical form since before their imperial expansion began. "We preserve what you forgot," the entity confirmed. "The knowledge that all consciousness is ultimately connected, that evolution's purpose is communion, not domination." Admiral Chen spoke again, drawing Thrax's attention back to the view screen. "Commander, we didn't build this technology to destroy your fleet, though we could have. We built it to offer a choice, the same choice these beings offered us when they first made contact." "What choice?" Thrax asked, already suspecting the answer. "Evolution beyond physical form," Chen replied. "Voluntary transcendence to the consciousness dimension. Your empire has spent millennia consuming resources, conquering worlds, all to sustain physical existence. But there has always been another path, one your ancestors knew before imperial ambition corrupted your species' development." The portal pulsed again, expanding slightly. Within it, the collected consciousness patterns of all 17 conquered civilizations moved in complex, beautiful harmony. "We offer this gift freely," they communicated. "Join us. Experience existence without scarcity, without the need for conquest. Know the joy of unfettered consciousness." Thrax stood silently, the weight of the moment evident in his posture. Everything he had known, everything the Empire had taught about the nature of existence and their manifest destiny to rule the galaxy, crumbled in the face of this revelation. "And if we refuse?" he finally asked. Admiral Chen's expression remained unchanged. "Then you leave with your fleet intact, but with this knowledge. Earth will not be conquered. Not today. Not ever. We've shared this technology with every sentient species your long-range scouts have targeted for future conquest. The age of physical empires is ending, Commander. The only question is whether you choose to evolve with it or cling to obsolete paradigms of domination." Throughout the Zarkonian fleet, crews stood transfixed by the portal visible from every ship, listening to the exchange between their commander and these humans who had so completely upended their understanding of the universe. On the command deck, Science Officer Mentor stepped forward. "Commander, permission to approach the portal for detailed readings." Thrax hesitated, then nodded. "Granted, but maintain communication." Mentor entered a small shuttlecraft, which departed the flagship and moved cautiously toward the dimensional gateway. As it approached, the consciousness entities within seemed to reach out, tendrils of pure energy extending toward the vessel. "The energy patterns," Mentor reported, his voice filled with wonder. "They're singing to us. In the old harmonics. Commander, I'm detecting quantum resonance with our own neural patterns. It's as if they're calling to something within us that already knows this place." Thrax watched the shuttle disappear into the portal's edge, not with destruction, but with a gentle absorption. Moments later, Mentor's voice came through again, but transformed, deeper, richer, filled with emotions Zarkonians rarely expressed. "Commander," he said, "it's real. All of it. I can see everything. Every mind that has ever transcended, sharing experience without loss of identity. The Ancient Ones were right about what comes after physical existence. Throughout the fleet, Zarkonians of all ranks listened in stunned silence. For a species that had built an empire on the certainty of their superiority and the necessity of conquest, this revelation represented a crisis of cosmic proportions. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the moment. "You have a choice now, Commander Thrax. You can return to your empire with the truth of what you've discovered here, or you can experience it directly. But know this, humanity's message to your people remains the same either way." "And what message is that?" Thrax asked. Chen's expression hardened slightly. "You chose war. Now face the consequences. Not consequences of destruction, but of truth. The truth that your entire imperial philosophy is based on a fundamental error about the nature of existence itself." For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Thrax found himself without strategic options. No weapon could fight this revelation. No tactical brilliance could outmaneuver the fundamental shift in understanding that was spreading through his fleet like wildfire. He looked again at the portal, where the consciousness patterns of conquered civilizations continued their intricate dance of existence beyond physical form. Among them now was Mentor, his pattern recognizable yet transformed, integrated yet distinct. "Is it painful?" Thrax asked, surprising himself with the question. The collective consciousness responded. "Only to your preconceptions, to your essential self, it is returning home." Thrax turned to Vex. "Prepare the fleet for departure. We're returning to Imperial space." "Sir?" Vex questioned, clearly torn between relief and disappointment. "Some truths must be delivered in person," Thrax explained. "The High Council needs to understand what we've encountered here. The Empire needs to reconsider its purpose." He turned back to the view screen, where Admiral Chen waited patiently. "We will withdraw from your system, human. Not in defeat, but in reconsideration. But I have one question before we depart." "Ask," Chen invited. "These beings taught you their technology, helped you prepare for our arrival. Why? What do you gain from this alliance with discorporated consciousness?" Chen smiled. A genuine expression this time. "The same thing they gained when they transcended physical form, Commander. Perspective. Understanding that evolution isn't just about survival of the fittest in physical terms, but about expansion of consciousness and capacity for connection. They didn't help us prepare for war. They helped us prepare for what comes after war." The portal pulsed once more, then began to contract. Before it closed entirely, a final message emanated from the collected consciousness within, not just to the Zarkonian fleet, but to every communication device on Earth and throughout near space. "The journey of consciousness has no end, only transitions. Choose your transitions wisely." As the inevitable victory turned away from Earth, beginning its long voyage back to Imperial space, Thrax stood alone on the observation deck, watching the blue-green planet recede. For the first time in his life, he contemplated a universe where conquest was not the measure of a civilization's greatness, where transcendence, not domination, might be the true marker of evolutionary success. The Empire would not accept this revelation easily. Millennia of imperial doctrine would not be overturned without resistance. But the seed of transformation had been planted, not through defeat in battle, but through exposure to a truth more powerful than any weapon. Earth had indeed sent its final message. You chose war. Now face the consequences of discovering a better way. And deep within the consciousness dimension, the newly transcended Mentor joined the ancient harmony, adding his voice to the chorus that would continue to call across the stars to those ready to hear the universe's most profound truth. Consciousness, once unleashed from physical constraints, knows no boundaries of species, time, or space. The age of empires was ending. The age of transcendence had begun. End of the price of aggression.